Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining in today. My name's Carl Martin, in case you didn't know. I've been involved with IPM for more years than I care to think about. IPM Says came about during a discussion with Greg Palmley, who owns ILMC. IPM stands for ILMC Production Meeting, and it's attended every year. We've been going now for about 13, 14 years, and it's attended by professionals of all disciplines from the production world in live events and particularly live music. It's the day before ILMC, and we sit down and talk about important things and sometimes non-important things. It is an exceptionally important meeting because it does allow everybody to get together and then continue to talk throughout the year. This morning's meeting has come about because Greg and I were talking about different things, and he suggested we do, this is the first, a series of IPM Says meetings and talk about relevant subjects. When I asked what today should be about, he said, well, there's only one subject, coronavirus. And I thought, oh, magic. So when we finished the meeting, I was talking with Sitska Kamstra, who's the person that produces IPM every year. Very well, she's the event producer. And I said, it ain't all doom and gloom, And she said, that's the title, which was start number one. So I said, okay, I'm only going to talk to people who are positive. So everybody I called, first question I asked them was, how are you feeling about the future? Are you positive? If they said yes, I continued to talk to them. If they said no, unfortunately, nobody did, I would have put the phone down. So we've got 8 people with us today from a broad spectrum of the industry, the event industry. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because it's their life. Why should I talk about them all the time? And then we're going to go through. We're going to start talking about the way forward, the future, and we're not allowed to talk negatively. That's the whole point of it. Can I introduce them first of all? Oh, sorry, there is one thing I have to tell you. When we first started talking about this, I was told that there could be 10 to 12 people involved. For various reasons, we had to change the technology, so it came down to screenshots. There's only 6 are going to be allowed. So we have 3 people in the green room, but they will come out as and when it's their turn, or they want to talk or whatever. So bear with us a little bit with you. It is the first, and we are going to do our best. So first of all, I'm going to ask Sarah. Sarah, would you kindly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, please? And the situation, all of you, what's the situation with the virus where you are?
Well, this is a live update from Cardiff. I'm Sarah Hemsley-Cole, Company Director of SC Productions Limited. We're an event production company and specialise primarily in the festival sector, but my background's also theatre. So we production manage and produce theatre shows, and I produce large-scale outdoor city takeovers, cultural events as well. So quite a broad portfolio. We've been fortunate during COVID to keep working on various projects that have come our way and continue to kind of still receive phone calls and offer some support and information to colleagues and industry buddies. So at the moment, I feel quite blessed that we are able to keep going in one way or the other. I'm able to walk to the office, so I'm sat in it today. I think we just got to keep smiling and try and find our way through it. So that's where I am at the moment. Over to the next person.
Thank you. Chrissy. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. So best regards first of all from Poland, where I'm sitting at home in the moment. Situation is still very much all is pretty tight. So even though we're slightly opening up, same goes for Germany. For me as a German and living in Poland, it is still a bit of difficult going backwards and forwards without always going into a 14 days quarantine. But I think it's just the thing what we have to live with for the time being. And being through the first quarantine when I came back to Poland, well, because I was in Germany trying to start a job when this all happened first, and from one day to the other it was all different. However, after a bit of a moment of shock, I think it is great to be finally back home and actually spend some time at home, and that gives a bit of a different thing, and it opens a lot of options to develop brand new things and brand new ideas. And I think that's it for the moment for what I'm doing. I'm site coordinating, I'm production managing, I did tour directing, I did personal assistance, and I worked for a very long time for a promoter and worked at venues as well. I think that's about what I can say about myself. Carl,
Thanks.
anything you want to know else?
No, well, what's the coronavirus situation in Poland? Germany.
Well, for the time being, the situation is that obviously Germany is slowly opening up more and more. And talking about the overall situation, same as in Poland. However, for shows and for projects, there's still a lot of unknowns, and it's slightly going to change. However, I think everybody's waiting for the first moment. I mean, we do have, let's call it, these kind of life experiences in terms of drive-in concerts, which as they're going, the very first ones went very successfully. Like, it took no time and they sold out the first one, but the actual, it doesn't feel like it's the overall thing. It doesn't feel
Chrissy,
similar to what we're used to.
Let's come back to that one, can we? Steve.
Sure.
Good. Thanks. Steve.
Morning, I'm Steve Zapp from ITB Booking Agency. I think it's definitely been interesting times. Spent, the first part of time just cancelling show. We work internationally, so things happen at different times in different countries. First set was cancelling or moving shows. The second period was trying to work out where to move shows to. And I must admit, in the last few weeks, this panel is really apt, because the majority of the calls or conversations I've been on recently is about how, what can happen and how we can make things happen. But distinctly, it seems different speeds in different countries. So here at the moment, still in the UK, very little can happen, but hopefully that might change soon.
Thank you, Steve. Andy?
Hello. Well, here I am. I'm Andy Lentil. I work for the Production Services Association. So we're a trade association. We've got about 2,500 members who aren't doing very much. Especially, well, they're not doing very much in live entertainment at the moment. There's nobody that really needs any lights hanging or screens hanging or speakers flying. So we've got a big membership who have spent the last couple of months, and we've spent the last couple of months helping them navigate this temporary normal, looking at the state aid that they can get and helping them achieve that. And it's been I've never worked so hard for a pay cut. I've got to say hello to Jim Frayling, who's just requested that I switch everybody to Warp Factor 7. This isn't the Starship Enterprise. It's IPM, Jim, but not as we know it. We've just been busy trying to help people help themselves and having faith in an industry that is resilient and full of resolve to get back to work. Currently, actually, our government in the UK are working with the whole industry in developing guidance on how to get back to work safely. So we've got something to look forward to. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Andy. We'll have more of that later on, please. Mate, can we
Greetings, everybody.
can we hear from you?
Yep, I just unmuted. Hello, everyone. My name is Máté Horváth, and my main job is a promoter in Hungary. I'm doing shows in the capacities of 100 to 10,000. Also organizing a conference, production-related conference, which is called Event Production Forum East, or EPFI, and also working with a Dutch management company as my second job. Right now in Hungary, the situation is it's like opening up, at least what I feel now. Obviously, what we see is that massive events are possibly the last to return. But as I saw yesterday, there was already a soccer game in the main stadium of Budapest, where, well, there were like a couple thousand people in one group. So I assume if sports can return, then other things can return. On the other hand, as Steve said, the first couple of months were pretty much about this rude awakening, and then trying to reschedule, cancel, find a way to make refunds without collapsing kind of problems. And then everybody was, I mean, obviously pretty much everything was pretty much looking hopeless, but at the same time, it looked like, yeah, but we are just postponing to the fall and it will be okay. And now we are postponing from November to 2021 November, which is less optimistic, but it's much more secure. And I think in the approach of bookings, ticket sales, and production, it's always better to go for the secure options. We are going on with the EPFI's organization. It will be November, and we believe that within the European Union, it will be possible to travel. That's what we hope right now. And on the other hand, if I want to say something really positive, is that in Budapest now it's allowed to do shows in open air spaces for seated audiences with keeping the 1.5 meter distance. And one of the venues where I'm doing most of my shows, called Dürerkert, was able to reopen in the last, I think it was 2 weeks ago, as a beer garden, which is making a huge save. And I think now every venue in Hungary is trying to just make even the smallest terrace so they can sell some drinks. And what I feel and what we see as a promoter is that the audience is very supportive. So, for example, refund requests are very low in the case of postponement.
Sorry, can we come back to that one? Can we come
absolutely.
back to the one after we? It's all right. It's all right. Thank you for that. Vati, good morning. Good afternoon. Mate, you're mute. Vati, you're mute.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Vatiswa Gilivane. I'm the Business Development Manager for the Ticket Pro Dome, which is a live events venue in Johannesburg, South Africa. COVID-19 for us at the moment, what I can say is we're sitting today at 37,000 identified positive cases. We are on day 70 of a lockdown. We started our lockdown at level 5, and 4 days ago, on the 1st of June, we started level 3. So what basically that means is that we have more economic activity as some of the sectors are being opened up for more economic activity, and more people are going back to the workplace as more businesses are opening, obviously under the prescribed health and safety protocols. Large gatherings and events as a whole are still prohibited, such as music concerts and exhibitions, business meetings. Those are still not allowed. But we've got programs and conversations that we're driving as a sector to lobby with government. But I think I'll touch on that as we move on with the conversation. Thank you, Cole.
Thank you, Vati. That's wonderful. But Mr. Sergeant, in your wonderful jumper, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl and Greg. I've got to say to both of you, that's the most understocked green room I've ever been in. And good morning to everyone. It's nice of you all to see me, as I can't see you. A brief intro from me before I hand back. I've been in the industry 39 years on the 29th of July, and it's probably fair to say that in that 39 years, we've experienced various recessions. We've experienced the GFC, the Iran war in the early 90s, but nothing can compare with what we're going through at the moment. And we'll be touching on that, no doubt, as we go. I've been involved in the venue industry for a long time. I'm the Senior Vice President for ASM Global across Asia, for our operations across Asia. And I can talk to you shortly about a little bit about what we've been doing and seeing in the venue industry.
Thanks, Paul. That's great. Alberto.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Alberto Artese. I'm Italian and I'm based in Milan. Today is quite rainy. And, you know, as you can see, I'm not very young. I've been working in the industry for almost 30 years as a promoter first, then production, and then in the last 10 years also with, in health and safety. I also represent Asso Musica, which is, and today I represent actually Asso Musica, which is the Italian National Live Music Shows Producer and Promoter Association. And I'm usually in charge of liaison about safety and security matter with the institution. Lately, considering the sanitary emergency, I've been working on a team to elaborating guidelines and protocols together with many different, many officers of the healthcare national system and various departments. That's it. Yeah, we will start again. Will be challenging. It's already challenging, but I save this for later.
Okay, one question, Alberto. Briefly, what's the situation with the virus in Italy?
Well, it's going. The numbers in general, they're going very, very, very low. Fortunately, and it's not been easy, but it's getting better. Also, in about 10 days, we will be able to start officially start to having shows, live shows. But you know, many rules and many rules.
We'll come back to that one.
From yesterday, from yesterday, we're gonna be able to travel in Italy because we haven't been able to do it. From yesterday, we can go from region to region, which is something, you know.
So we can all come to Italy and then come back to the UK and spend 14 days in a hotel.
I'm not sure about that.
All right. Listen, I want to kick off now. Thank you all for those introductions. As I said, my question to all of you is, do you feel positive for the future? You all said yes. So, Fatty, can you tell me why you feel positive for the future and what's happening to make you feel this way?
Okay, so there's a couple of things, Carl. So the first thing that comes to mind for me, when it was announced by the government and the president in South Africa made an announcement that we were going on lockdown, we were, at the time, we were still at double digits in terms of positive cases. The COVID-19 thing at the time was, we felt it was so far removed. But when it was announced that we were going on lockdown, there was a lot of shock, especially across the events industry as a whole, because the first thing that happened was that large gatherings were banned. So we had to close office, we had to pack up our things, and we started working from home. But immediately, our mindset was around, if we cannot have events at the moment and working in a venue, meaning the venue is closed, what is it that we can do to make sure that when this thing ends, or when we are given scenarios to operate under the new normal, how we will come out in the end? And the first thing we identified as a team was to start creating our own content. I work a lot with promoters and local international promoters that bring, and event organizers that bring events into my venue. So that's primarily how I'm involved in the events industry. But we had to change the way we think. We had to change having to wait on other people to bring opportunities to us as a venue, and we had to use the experience and expertise of having been in the business for over 22 years, not myself personally, the business and the business and the venue. And we started on the path of creating our own content. And that's really what we have done and what we have utilized the past 10 weeks, as it were, of lockdown, identifying key partners, creating opportunities for collaboration, and designing projects that will be able to answer the immediate term when we come out of lockdown. Because the idea was that we're going to come out of lockdown and we are going to have a lot of restrictions still. So the way we address that has to start from there and allow room to grow from that point on. So creating own content, collaborating and creating partnerships is the key words and the key driving pillars of how we are dealing with the business currently. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you. We're going to come back to you. Listen, all of the panel, please don't wait for me to talk, because I don't want to talk. If you want to steam in and say something, then do so. Paul, what's the situation in Australia? From what Vati's just said, is it a similar situation or what? You're on mute, Paul.
Is that better?
That's lots better.
There we go. Look, for those of you in the UK that used to watch Blue Peter, here's something I prepared earlier. Just a quick snapshot of Australia and a touch on New Zealand. The entire country, as of 6 o'clock this evening, has had 7,299 cases across the entire country. Sadly, in every one of these is a family or a loved one. There's been 102 deaths, but it's 102. It's not in the thousands like everyone else has been suffering. And there's 6,500 people just over have recovered from the virus to date. Again, across the entire hospital network, there's only 5 people in ICU and 25 people in hospital. And today, an increase on yesterday, because there were only 3 new cases yesterday, and today it's 8. So that really they're staggering figures, and I wanted to kind of point them out because it puts everything else into perspective as to what's happening in Australia and in New Zealand. The government in this country launched the COVID Safe app some weeks ago now, probably 4 weeks or so ago. There are 6.13 million users of that app. And there was some hesitancy in the early days with the app. There was a group of something like 48 of the top privacy lawyers in Australia came together to pull it apart and say, this is safe. It's not going to impede on people's privacy and their rights, etc., etc. Got a lot of comfort out of that. But over 6 million people using that app. One of the challenges we face here are the borders are still closed. The international borders, they closed 8-10 weeks ago, and we're only open from there for residents and citizens returning to Australia. And then the state borders, and there are 7 states and territories across Australia, some of those states closed their own borders and are still closed, and potentially they might be closed until September. So pretty stringent lockdowns. And what happened with the returning citizens and residents from Australia in coming back into Australia is that after a very short period of being allowed to go home and self-isolate, and clearly that had its problems, it was compulsory to go into hotels. And so people in their thousands in returning to Australia have gone into hotels in isolation, and isolation means in the hotel rooms, not in the gyms or the bars or the leisure facilities. They've been in their hotel rooms for a fortnight, and that's still happening. So it's pretty stringent.
So Paul, sorry, okay, we got this. So what you've got on there that New Zealand have all their restrictions are lifted. How soon? I can't see you. I can still see that COVID. Yet you can take that out of the way now. We've seen it.
Good.
How soon are you going to be able to start doing events?
Well, New Zealand is looking at doing events in the and going down to level 1, and so mass gatherings will be allowed. That's looking like the end of next week. That's stadiums, arenas, sporting events, concerts from the end of next week in New Zealand. We'd like to think Australia might follow suit in the not too distant future after that. But bear in mind, you know, they've had very, very few cases in New Zealand, and there is talk about creating a transport bubble between Australia and New Zealand for free and easy movement between the two countries. So,
how soon do you? Because obviously you're positive. How soon? So that's good news for you in New Zealand. In Australia, do you think this is going to follow?
Not necessarily. I think some of the states and state premiers are a little more hesitant and wary about what the next couple of months might bring. So Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia still have their borders closed. So if you try to go to Brisbane here from Melbourne, you'd have to go into isolation for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So we're trying to work. Obviously, they're trying to work. There's a lot of pressure on those governments from business, not just our business, because it's decimating the tourist trade, for example.
Yeah, sure. But for our industry, what's your thoughts?
Look, I think we'll be starting. We're doing a lot of work in terms of just following on from what Vadi was saying. Our approach has been about working on our recovery plans. Yeah, and every venue, I'm sure, around the world, and certainly around in Australia, is working on a recovery plan, which is going to be ultra important in working with government to convince them, or work with them, not convince them. It's not a sales job. That we are capable, and we've thought it through with a detailed recovery plan to be able to reopen our doors and allow people back into venues.
Can I stop you there, because that is a really important statement. The fact that you're working with and advising, which is the reason I've met Vati, was she made exactly that statement on a forum a couple of weeks ago, which unfortunately the chairman missed. But I saw it, and that's why she's here. Alberto, in Italy, how soon are you going to be open again?
Okay, we have to consider that we started to stop the live shows and the mass gathering on the 23rd of February in Lombardy, which means here in Milan, in Veneto, which is the Venice region, and in Friuli, where Trieste and other quite big cities are. Then the general lockdown started on the 8th of March and has been renewed by 2 weeks by 2 weeks without a final statement from the government. Now, with the decree that came out on 16th of May, we know that the mass gathering events are forbidden until the 31st of July, so the end of this July. But from 15th of June, there will be, cinemas, theater, and even outdoor live events can start again, but with a lot of rules. The main thing is the capacity. It's going to be 200 people indoor and 1,000 spectators outdoor, which means 200 people is including the crew, all the staff, all the people working. Not the same outdoor, when 1,000 regards just the punters, the audience. As you know, Italy is always very bureaucratic. The rules are quite, about 20 main rules with sub rules. Of course, only pre-assigned seated tickets, no standing, 1 meter between the people, the persons, masks, at least surgical mask for everybody, temperature check at the entrance, no food and beverage allowed at all, not even before the show, during the show, at the end of the show. No way. Then all the other rules are hygiene and sanitation rules and air conditioning or air changing system rules. I must say that the thing is, 2 days after this decree was published, immediately the big promoters group like Nation Italy or the CTS event team, all the different companies that are on the event team in Italy, and few other announced officially the cancellation or the postponement of all the big shows, all the big tours. Italian artists, big Italian artists, also foreign artists, as maybe Steve can confirm in a while. We're talking about 250 between tours, big festivals, and shows. That there is an estimation to go at the end of September around 3,000 cancelled or postponed events. At the same time, smaller promoters, they said, no, we want to do even small shows. I'm not sure when they said so, they did the business plan yet, but I know them working on that. And that is where also the association represent here started to put together this committee to try to understand guidelines and protocols to allow this small size show to happen.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Steve, can we bring you in? Because we've only got an hour, unfortunately, I can't give you as much time as I would love to, but still start shouting. Can we bring Andy Lentil back in, please, Steve? And Sarah and
I'm
Steve.
here.
Yeah, Andy Lentil, Sarah and Steve. And thank you, all of you so far. Just keep talking. Don't sit there quietly, please. Andy, government. I'm not talking about government give us money, but are you I get the impression from you that one of the reasons you're feeling positive is, one, because people have all worked together to go forward, and the government. Tell me about the government.
Well, I don't think I think every government around the world has been made to realise the value of live entertainment, any live event, and if you drag corporate events into that, in the UK, there are reports everywhere that events are worth £70 billion to the economy. The creative industry, which encompasses theatre and artists, and that is worth £110 billion to the economy. Governments are aware of the value of entertainment. Governments are aware of the value of live entertainment. No government wants to stop any sector delivering revenue, taxable revenue, into its coffers. So any government is keen for every part of its economy to be functioning again as soon as possible, but safely. So our government, through our sponsoring department, which is the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, they, right at the beginning of this, they threw their doors open and said, what do we need people to do? What do we need to do? They gave us information. We gave them information. Now we're working together. In the UK, we have a staged plan, just like every other country will have a staged plan for reopening. Unfortunately, live events and what we're calling organized gatherings, not mass gatherings, but organized gatherings will be the last people to come back, and we'll have to wait for every other test to be satisfied. But while that's happening, we need to develop guidance on how to operate safely. And in the UK,
Sorry,
a lot. Go on.
Interestingly, Paul has just said that the governments might be aware of the value of entertainment, but we're not high up on the list of priorities. Is that your impression?
Like I said, we're going to be the last because we're the most challenging environment.
Right.
While 2 meter spacing, and that's what it is in the UK, the cornerstone, this is Public Health England saying that the government's policy, Public Health England don't have anything to do with it. The government's policy, the cornerstone of their safety measures is staying 2 meters apart. If that's the cornerstone, our sector needs a new cornerstone. And that new cornerstone might be a group of measures which include testing, tracking, tracing. Like South Korea, they have theatre shows open, but they have a robust test, track and trace system. And investing in that is far cheaper than subsidizing a sector that can't actually work, or several sectors that can't actually work. So we might see globally a different approach that doesn't include 2 meter distancing, because especially for outdoor events and the margins involved and large scale touring, it's just not financially viable. You can't open a venue. I think it was somebody from a large international promoter said we can make no money by keeping the doors closed, and we can't afford to lose money by opening the doors.
Say that again.
We can make no money at the moment keeping the doors closed, but we can't afford to lose money when we open them again.
Okay. Paul, you wanted to make a point.
Yeah. Look, I mean, as I say, governments are they're not going to get pushed around with some of this stuff, and in particular, the medical officers that are making the calls. They aren't elected people; they're people in day jobs, and they won't be pushed around. What we've realised down here is we formed a forum called the Live Events Forum, which is the coming together of the major promoters, the major venues, the major associations, the VMA, the LPA, etc. We've appointed someone to lead that forum that's not in the music business, and as much as people on this call might not appreciate it, government don't necessarily want to listen to people from the music industry because they see that everyone wants to go out and make money. That's not their priority. Their priority is making sure venues might be able to open safely. We're bringing in somebody to lead that forum that's not from the music industry, that's well respected, well networked, knows their way around the political scene, to be able to demonstrate. And what we've been told by government is, you come to us, we're under-resourced, we're vastly under-resourced. You come to us with a well thought through, detailed plan of how you can operate a venue, and you'll get the ear of the medical teams. And it has to be somebody, you need that plan that's going to be verified by someone that's recognized as well. So we're doing an awful lot of work in that space.
All right, a quick question and quick answer from you. Do you think that around the world, people are working together and, to use your expression, forgetting the competition and their own egos?
I see that in this country, absolutely.
Okay. Sarah, is that happening in the UK?
To an extent, I'm sure, yes. I mean, it's difficult trying to weigh up economy versus the right thing to do, people's health, people's safety. So there's always going to be a need to find that balance. And but for me, following on from what Andy was talking about in terms of the lobbying and the work being done with government and the realization that we will be at the back end of the industries that can get re-going, my concern and the thing that obviously a lot of people who are listening to this conversation, who are the people who work within this sector, it's about how we try and protect ourselves and look after each other and find a way through until that point when lots more of our industry can work. You know, we are a creative sector. We have a tremendously highly trained, highly practical, skilled, artistic people within our sector. And what we've got to do is make sure they're still there when the industry comes back, albeit in the UK, looking very much like sort of the middle part of next year, fingers crossed, hopefully. So for me, that's what's really important, is how do we take everybody on that journey forward whilst, you know, organisations like the PSA and stuff are having the conversations, and the CPA and everyone who's lobbying government and working with the DCMS. There's lots of individuals who just aren't part of that conversation, but their livelihoods depend on it, and we need them to stay strong and positive and looked after and cared for, and still being creative as we go forward.
But Sarah, you're in this situation yourself, but you're going forward. One of the reasons you were positive is you're working with the I Stedford.
Yeah.
Is this something that people are doing, or are they sitting on their fannies waiting for people to pay them?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like I say, we're a small company. There's only 5 of us on my payroll, and we've been fortunate to pick up work both with ES Global and 9 Yards at the hospital conversion of the stadium in Cardiff. And last week I was on a TV show that was a hybrid of the Eirdd Eisteddfod, which is the junior Eisteddfod we have in Wales. Is usually an outdoor event attracting 70-odd thousand people through in a week. It's part of a sort of competitive process that goes through the schools and then takes place in a big jamboree in a field. It's been running 100 years as of 2022. But last week we created a hybrid in a TV studio within one of the Eirdd premises, and the children sent in their competition entries online. They were judged and then presented in the studio with presenters using digital formats and connecting via Skype TXs to the individuals as they competed. So interestingly, created a whole new vibe to the show and allowed a very traditional part of our Welsh culture to still happen. And I think broadcast is an opportunity to try and present live work differently. And, you know, the broadcasters are equally as desperate for content. And in the UK, the broadcast industry is beginning to come together and find ways of going back to the studios and on sets to start making work with COVID restrictions in place. For us last week, we needed a much greater footprint and segregation of rooms to be able to have a team. There was 52 of us on location, you know, extra sanitary provision, a cleaner present the whole time, keeping our spaces. The food arrived in individually portioned cases. Do you know what I mean? Lots of thought had gone into how we could do it. And I think, you know, we as an industry have got to find those solutions for ourselves as well as wait for people to come to us with them, as Vati said. But ultimately, we've got to try and stay strong. Otherwise, it'll beat us, and it can't. You know, we are an amazing international group of people, and those skills are important. And we've got to find a way of retaining them and keeping people involved in the industry in this arid time.
I can see that. I just there are times that I think, are people looking after themselves, or are they waiting for with the begging bowl? Andy told me a lovely story about a guy who's from the industry. I won't define what he does because it'll identify him, but he's out now driving Sainsbury's vans, and he's getting up at Sparrow's Fart in the morning and working until after dark in the evening. And he's earning a wage, but he's saying the work is horrific. It's so hard. But at least he's doing something. Steve, how do you think? I mean, Sarah's just touched on the same as we're doing now, the broadcast rather than the reality. Is this something you're looking at as an agent, or are your bands thinking?
Did we all just lose Carl?
Yes, I think he just. Yeah, I think we just lost Carl. I guess that.
Well, we'll just talk
I think
amongst
he was
ourselves. You know,
asking me
just
about
expand.
broadcasting and stuff like. I think that obviously the important
Go
thing
for it,
in
Steve.
all of this is finding a way of things happening safely. And I think at the moment, lots of promoters and managers and artists are checking out drive-in shows, checking out streaming events, pay-per-view. I think there's one this Saturday that Laura Marlin is doing from the Union Chapel. I think she's doing 2 shows in one day. The first one's geo-targeted to the UK, the second one to America, and it seems to have gone particularly well. I think for one-off events, that certainly can be something that will be really interesting. But obviously, there's only a number of those you can do, limited number of those you can do, which before, I suppose, it doesn't have so much of an impact.
I think that's it, and it doesn't take much as much production effort either. You know, there's no stage to build, there's no PA to fly, or not as big a PA to fly as well. So it doesn't sustain work at a level that exists at the moment. But you know, we'll get there. Carl, you disappeared. It's obviously at your age you have to keep nipping out of the room every now and again.
Chrissy, can you hear me? Mate, can you hear me? Anybody?
Yeah, we can all hear you. We can all hear you.
Okay, sorry, I'm not quite sure what happened there. If I'm honest, I think I got overexcited and hit the off button. Sorry, Steve. I don't know. Did you have a chance to answer that question?
Yeah, if it's about streaming shows.
So carrying on then, Chrissy, we've got you in the room. Mate, Mate, what's the positive feel for you in Budapest, in Hungary?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's great to see that the obviously cancelled shows got refunded, but yeah, I mean by most promoters. But what we see is that people are very patient, and if there is a reschedulement, even 18 months we are talking about, people are rather not refunding their tickets, and that's great. And we are talking about a country where like one show ticket for a major gig is really a lot of money. Like it really counts. So that's great. Also, we have right now the government set 15th of August as end of lockdown, and I mean end of show ban on the lockdown. So officially from the 16th of August, there could be massive events outdoors, which meant a couple of festivals in Hungary just rescheduled themselves to the last weekend of August. So is it looking like now there will be like 6 major festivals in Hungary, none of them planning to have international artists. And to be fair, I don't really think that any overseas artist can tour in Europe in this year. So I still have shows on sale for American or Canadian bands, but we are already talking about postponements. But what we see is that possibly European Union bands and let's say like broader European artists might be able to tour in November or December, but nobody knows how it will be regulated indoors. It's not clear at this point, but at least we are talking about it and people buying tickets. So that's a good thing.
Chrissy, what's the situation with live shows? Do you feel they're going to happen again in your part of the world?
Well, I mean, my part of the world, I live in a city, but I'm working more globally. Yeah. Wherever the call is coming from. I mean, the Middle East, I did other things. So if I'm going to look into this and I look at my own story on what I witnessed, and you asked me on the first, like when you approached me, you asked me a bit of, do you think positive? And I said, yes. The reason for that was more related to when you suddenly it's a roller coaster ride. Yeah. You've been told you're not essential to the day-to-day life and to the survival of human mankind. So we just cut you off. Hello? Yeah, they're back there. and you're not essential. And from one day to the other, as a freelancer, you don't get payment. And because you did an investment before and you suddenly are completely cut off, it's a very weird thing. There's a lot of anger in yourself, and you really go to explode, and you think like, oh, we should go back into the end of the 60s, goes on the street and cause some riots and actually kick some faces. At the same time, you go over that phase, and then you start to think. You start to think more, and then you come to the point of what me as being like in production directing or into site coordinating. The very first thing came back to me, say, what are we doing? What is our USP? The USP is to solve problems. So I took it as a challenge, and I said, okay, let's solve problems. How and what is this industry? Let's start again. What was the live industry as we call it in the beginning? It was a guy who actually was brave enough to go into a market square, to stand in front and actually performed. Suddenly that turned into, he became either a philosophist or he became an artist. Maybe he took an instrument and he started to do the first music performance live. At a certain time, you realize what we set up is so much depending on the overall and global touring situation with so much money involved that you think, how do I approach this now? And you come back to something what could be called like what Cirque du Soleil did in the very past. They actually approached an industry form in a blue ocean format. I just dropped out. Am I back? Okay. So in a blue ocean format. So what they did was they looked at circus and they approached it in a format to say, what's not so good anymore? So they cut out the animals. The next thing they said, no more stars, because it's the product which says. So I go back to what Vati said before, create your own content. Don't be so dependent on the global thing, because I can do entertainment in a village and I can create this and we can do all these things. So I believe we have to be smart and we have to think about, because one thing has been proven, as freelancers, there was nobody picking up and actually supporting us. We cannot survive a year on this. So the only thing which I took then on was, for a while it was about, do I want to stay in this industry? Yeah. And I looked around and I said, I had great years, and I can look back to fantastic times with great artists, with fantastic concerts all over the place. It brought me back to the point, let's create and do something myself, because there will be nobody who will call me. So I thought, okay, let's call some friends. And this was an amazing thing and an amazing experience, that suddenly people within the industry, if it's a designer or if it's a site coordinator, if it is a venue manager or it's somebody else, and they come together and think, hey, what can we do? And how can we deal with the situation? You come to these amazing ideas, which you all can come down to if you think about it. Because at the end of the day, if you let loose, you have two hands free. And that makes you creative. And we are in a creative industry. And I believe that's the motivation that we should go back to.
I love that statement. I love. Okay, sorry, Steve, you're showing as being on the screen. Are you live?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have we lost everything?
No, I'm here.
No.
Alberto.
Yeah, no, just
Alberto, your name should be Arturo, because that's what I always think.
Okay, no problem. Like the famous fettuccine, you know?
Yeah.
The famous recipe. No, because I was listening to Mate, and he said we refounded the tickets. You know, you can say everything about Italy, but it's never boring. You know, the government, together with 2-3 days after they released this, I mean, the decree, the sanitary decree for the measures of containment in all the different sectors of our industry, not of all industry, nor production activities. They also released an economical, very, very big decree. Is 300 and something pages that nobody still managed to read from the beginning to the end. But they said for kind of industry, which is travel agencies and live shows, spettacoli, as we say in Italy, nobody has to refund any tickets. They can emit vouchers because the organizers, the promoter, they're not responsible for the cancellation, for the pandemic, so they can emit vouchers. The value is the same value of the ticket, but you don't have to go to the same shows. You can use like money actually, and but with the same promoter than the ticket you bought. So now there are 3 million tickets around, equivalent of 200 million euros that are not be refunded. I don't know if this is a common situation, it's only the Italian one. Another thing I would like to ask to Steve.
Alberto,
Yeah.
sorry, because we're running out of time.
Oh, sorry.
I can't hear Steve, but apparently he can hear me. Steve, what's your reply to Alberto with that? And there is another question. Are bands going to be willing to play in areas like Italy or wherever is opening up? Steve?
I think there's a difference between domestic shows touring and international at the moment. For example, I think the other day, a 2,500 ticketed sat show in Portugal actually happened, which is obviously a socially distanced show that's positive. But obviously, I've had an act that's due to play Tallinn Music Week that have been asked to come in 2 weeks before to semi-socially distance quarantine to play the show, which obviously 15 days for one show gives them a lot to think about. With regards to refunds and ticketing, that seems to vary between country to country and is pretty contentious at the moment. But I think talking about positivity, and one of the encouraging things in all of this, I think, is, and nearly every promoter I speak to says the same, is the requests by the public for refunds have been incredibly low. So I think one danger in all of this would be if public were customers were running away from the potential of going to shows in the future. But at the moment, it seems to be they're most of them are retaining their ticket sales, hoping that events will happen. And obviously, it's all of us positioned to try and make sure that's done in a safe manner for everybody, including the artist and crew side. But there's a belief by a lot of people that if a customer wants a refund or needs a refund, they should get one. But obviously, if everybody did take their money out, then a lot of events, venues, promoters would probably go bankrupt. So it is a big issue unless those refund scheme, if the voucher scheme is backed by individual governments. But, as I said, the biggest thing from all of it for me is that the refund request seems to be on average very minimal, which is encouraging for the future.
Okay, I'm told I can speak. I don't know quite unfortunately, we've had a few glitches. Having said that, I've really been pleased with what's gone on today. I think it's positive. Andy, you're looking a little bit pensive. You want to say something?
I'm always thinking, mate. I've just had a quick scan through some of the questions, and Jim was saying. Jim Frading was saying about the fact that in the UK we may be allowed to do large-scale shows in the 4th of July. Will that be with 2 meters distancing? In the UK, the guidance is looking like two different things, and this kind of addresses Rob Roberts' point as well. In the construction of a show, if you want to be looking at construction industry guidance on how to work COVID-19 safely, that might be a good place to look right now, because we are kind of, looked at as a construction style job. So that might be good to look at. Then, if you look at the crowd side of things, there's probably going to be a line drawn between that. So there's workplace guidance, and then the crowd. The guidance is much more loose, and it is do as much as you can to encourage people to be 2 meters apart. There are protocols being proposed that might reduce those distances for the crowd. So you might get a better capacity, but that's for the future. But right now, it's kind of workplace safety is much more strict and much more. There's much more of a regime around that, and the public can, at the end of the day, they will have their own choice whether to attend or not. And our sector's job is to make sure they're confident in the measures you've taken on your site.
Okay, Paul has just made a really good point. The sports industry seem to have got their act together. They seem to be producing things that are happening. Paul, do you want to just give us a quick one? We're going to run on a bit, although we're supposed to finish at 1 o'clock. We're going to run on because we can. Paul.
Yeah, look, all the venues, or a lot of venues, of course, stadiums, arenas, sports halls, are dependent on sport as much as they are, or more so than they are on entertainment. And they've worked and broken it down into how they deal with the teams, i.e. the artists in this case, to ensure there's a safe passage for the artists, for the crew that work around them, and all the staff that work around, which is no small number. And is working on those plans. It'd be interesting, Andy, to hear who's working on the plans, say in the UK. Is it a group that's come together to do that, or is it sporadic? What we're finding here is the group that's come together to put those plans in place. The sports governing bodies, the venues, the Players Association have all kind of meshed together to come up with some really interesting and important working solutions.
Andy, you made the point that the major sports gets a lot of TV revenue, but I assume you're back. Do I assume that sports and the event, I don't know, live music or live events industry aren't working together? Because sport is a live event.
They are most definitely working together. The government have put together a task force, and under that task force are working groups across promoters, across theatres, across production, across every element of type of event. And actually in those working groups are people, some of the top people that have developed protocols for the sports sector. So we are getting the information from the people who've already done the work, and we're getting input from all the people who will be doing the work.
Okay. Steve is asking to come in. Can somebody tell me when Steve finishes talking? Because I'm not getting any communication at all from him. Steve, you wanted to say something about this report.
Well, no, it's just interesting on recovery plan. A lot of people where Music Venues Trust has obviously done a lot of great work and is talking about how and when and at what level of business venues can open safely and B financially. But it's interesting, the report that Jim Fralin's just mentioned on the comment that Melvin Ben has put together called the Health Verification Plan, that he's looking at ways of connecting with some government plans, i.e. you go and get a test once you get a positive, connected to their app, once you get a positive, a negative result, of course, that you then can go to the show, have certain screening on the door of the show. But the aim is obviously to feel that people are more confident going there, and that's from obviously the customer perspective. But there's certainly a lot of attempts at positive, safe recovery plans, and as I said, with Melvin's one, it's in association with government plans as well. I don't know where that is at, but the article ran yesterday, and the document's very interesting.
Okay. Sorry,
I actually
who's
think.
talking?
Andy. And I actually think Melvin's might be actually having a conversation with somebody in a government department as we're speaking now.
Okay, good. Is it costing him money?
Of course, it isn't.
I'll let that go by. Paul has made the comment that these tests are only good for 2 or 3 days max. I'm not sure what that relates to. Vati, unfortunately, has had to sign off because she's got connection problems. But what she did, I asked everybody for bullet points initially, and I got a few, and I got some really good ones. In fact, I'm going to quote them elsewhere. But she was talking about co-creation and collaboration and reimagination. Alberto has talked about preparation. Chrissy, that you can't beat that one. Take your hands off, and your hands are free. That's a cracker. Mate, you've spoken about things going forward and working together as well. It would seem to me, Steve, I'm sorry I've missed half of your dialogue, and Sarah, I'm in the same situation with you. Chrissy, thank you. I think we need to wrap up now, but I want to say thank you to all of you. I want to say that I think we've been positive, and we seem to be getting non-abusive messages saying that so I don't know what to, I'm glad to say that this time. Ed Grossman has just said thank you for a good panel, so thank you, Ed, and thank you for everybody for taking part. And will you please, if we do more of these, will you please make yourselves available, because I know you put yourselves out, and I'm really grateful. Thanks a million. And Greg Palmley, thank you.